After all that work drafting your manuscript, what is the best way to edit it? With a draft in hand and a publisher in mind, you are ready to start editing your book. At this point, I like to stop calling it a draft and start calling it a manuscript, because that's exactly what it is. It is your manuscript that hopefully you're going to submit to publish soon. So how do you edit it? Well, I've developed what I call the 5-edit system. It's a way to help me break down the editing process without getting overwhelmed with all the parts like I used to do. So in the 5-edit system, you go through your manuscript 5 times in 5 different ways. And it helps you to hone in on just the thing you're editing for at that time and gives you the freedom to kind of let go of all the other things, because when it's all coming at you at once, it can be overwhelming and a lot. So here's an overview of the 5-edit system. You start with an informal edit. As you're writing your manuscript, you're probably reading over your words and making little tweaks here and there. You may change a verb, you may decide to add some punctuation. There's little things that you're catching just as you are writing your manuscript. And if you remember, when you get to the finished stage of the draft, I tell you to reread the entire manuscript from beginning to end. That's your informal edit. And that's the first of the 5 edits that you do on your manuscript. The second edit is looking just at content and pacing. It's a way to kind of telescope back and get the big picture of the entire manuscript. Is it working? When you read it, are there places where it slows down and you might lose a reader? Does it answer all the questions that your reader has? Does it have all the information that you intended it to have? Is all the content there, and does it read well from beginning to end? That's the content and pacing edit, and that's edit number 2. Edit number 3 is probably what you think of when you're thinking of editing your book. It's the proofreading. It's when you get into the language of the manuscript. So this is the point that you look at verb tenses. It's when you look at subject-verb agreement. So all that proofreading is part of the language edit, which is the 3rd edit of the 5-edit system. The 4th edit is the visual edit. And this is when you look at the way that your manuscript looks. If you are self-publishing, the visual edit is essential because you're responsible for everything about how your book looks. If you're working with a traditional publisher, they will likely make a lot of these decisions. But in the visual edit, you will be thinking about things like the font and the headings and any sort of figures or tables that you include in your manuscript. You want to consider how they look on the page. You also want to make sure that it is very consistent throughout the book. That's the visual edit. Now, you don't want to do the visual edit until you've done the content and pacing and the language edits, because as you do those edits, you may rework things, which may change where things are on the page. In the visual edit, you're going to also be doing things like any sort of gray boxes, any sort of call-out quotes. Any of those kinds of things need to be included and formatted in the visual edit. Now, even if you're using a traditional publisher, you're going to indicate where those go and how you would prefer those to look. So the visual edit's important no matter what kind of publisher you're using, but the way that you do those edits will look differently depending on the publisher. So once you've done your informal edit, you've done your content and pacing edit, you've done your language edit, and you've done the visual edit, you are now ready for the final edit. This is when you go back from the very beginning of your manuscript and you look at every single thing. You read it through, and I suggest that you read the entire manuscript out loud because that slows down your reading. We don't speak quite as fast as we can read silently, and so it makes you pause and consider how you would say those words as well, and you often catch mistakes that you wouldn't catch otherwise. So it's a slow, methodical edit through the entire manuscript. And this is kind of your final chance to catch any lingering mistakes. So that's the 5-edit system. And if you do it 5 times in 5 different ways, you will catch most of your mistakes. Now, it is still likely that you will miss something because it's really, really difficult to catch all of your own mistakes. So I often suggest hiring a proofreader or having someone else proofread your manuscript just to have extra eyes on the manuscript. If you're fortunate, you may even be able to find some beta readers. But that's the 5-edit system, so now you know how to edit your manuscript.